Hello and welcome to another Spaz Kangaroo tutorial. Today I'm going to be showing you a time lapse of my animation process so you kind of get an idea how to do this. I'm not making this a tutorial because this is over, I think, 10 hours of footage, maybe 8, but it took a while, and demonstrating this live would have been a longer series than I really wanted. This is already a series that's gone on for a year, and spending all that time making the videos and editing wouldn't have been worth it. So I'm just going to time-lapse this last bit and hopefully give you a general idea how to animate. So what I'm doing here is just posing my character and pretty much just getting some initial block in for the entire animation. I have like a pose here. I'm not really worrying too much about the face because I come back and animate that at the end. But for now, I'm just kind of making like the walk cycle / run cycle / jump over that little block there, as you saw in the video right before I started talking. So just trying to get it all to look good. This is pretty much the exact same process I did for my walk cycle animation, which I posted like last month. And it's pretty much the same. I mean, the only difference now is making sure the poses line up with the landscape and the environment around him. So I have to just make sure everything works. One thing to keep in mind when animating, like the most important thing, and I think I said this in my other video, one of the most important things to keep in mind is where the weight of your character is. This is like, I'm not a great animator, but this is probably the biggest issue I see with beginner animators. They don't have any weight to their character. So for me, for the most part, my character, the weight is around the hips because that's where he's standing up straight the entire time. That's like his center of gravity. So when he's moving, you should always, like whenever he moves to a new pose, you should always think, where will the weight be in this instance? So at the moment, the weight, his weight shifts right here because he's trying to jump over that block. So his weight should start down, and once we move back in the pose, you'll see this. His weight starts down and then shifts up right before he jumps. He leaps into the air, and as he comes down, his weight comes down, and then he kind of like bobs at the bottom because the weight will kind of push him down. And right here is just the transition between the initial jump to the vault over the log. I think the vault is actually probably my favorite pose in the entire animation. Even though it was fairly simple, I mean, you just move him, once again bearing in mind where the weight would be and how much his arm would go down when he leaps over this log. But even so, it ends up looking really cool at the end. I kind of... this is kind of crappy animation right here. I didn't really fully animate the bit between the run to the log and the leap over it, but that's just because I have a camera cut here, and I could cheat it, so there was really no reason to spend all the time animating something that no one would see anyway. So work easier, not harder. Even if it's going to be a little bit sloppy in the transitions, you can just hide it with a camera cut. They do that in professional movie making all the time. Constantly hiding issues with a cut. So editing is fairly important. In this case, I was thinking about the editing while making the animation, so I could get away with this. But if you're doing a project with a team and you're not going to be the only person making the animation, then you might want to be clean the entire time, because the person who's doing the camera animation may decide they want to do a different shot later on, and if you haven't animated that thoroughly, then that could cause issues. So just working on it more, making sure the weight is looking good, especially as he lands and right before he leaps again, because even though the shot is hidden, we want his weight to kind of move over the log in the next shot. So kind of that, which part of animation is that? It's like the, rebound, squash and stretch. That's what it is. So even though it's not exactly squash and stretch because we're not really stretching anything, it's kind of squash and stretch for the entire body, which is pretty like if you think of his entire body as a ball, you can see the way the shape of his. If you imagine it just as a giant blob, if you blur the entire image, like if you think of it, it would be a big ball squashing and stretching all over the place. And it tends to be in the way the weight is traveling. That's when it squashes. So weight is very important in animation. So this is right before I get to the part where he leaps over the log. I forget what I'm doing here. Oh, yeah, getting my storyboard up. I had rendered this earlier in the day. Initially, he had a sword in his hand, but I thought it was more interesting to just have him kick a creeper later on. I was also initially going to have like 6 creepers, but I didn't want to do that much animation, and I wanted to get this video out the door, so I just ended up sticking with 1. I still think it turned out pretty cool. It's one of the longer animations I've done, so I learned a lot doing this, and I hope you guys learned something from it too. So once again, just blocking out the poses for the leap over here, making sure his foot stays in contact with the ground until he actually leaves the ground. So you want to have the foot staying on the ground so it looks like he's actually pushing off. And when you're landing, you want the foot to land first and then hold in position as he comes down. So it looks like he's placing his foot down and then actually putting his weight on it. My rig isn't the best. I realized this a fair bit after actually making it. There are quite a few issues with it. I cleaned it up a little bit for this, but even so, it still ended up being kind of crappy. If you want to use another rig, you might want to. The biggest issue I found was my initial decision, which I kind of just made on the fly. I have no clue why. I initially decided to leave the arm attached to the body, which was a major mistake. Don't do that if you're starting from the beginning and just watching this through. Do not leave the arm attached to the body. You may not even want to leave the legs attached to the body. The legs aren't quite as bad. They do some weird, funky warping too, but the biggest issues I had were the arms. And if you see a lot of the animations on Minecraft animations online, most of the time they don't attach the arms anyway, so you're adding the arm connection really didn't help anything. I definitely like the bendy limbs though. That's kind of cool. Otherwise, it would just look like regular Minecraft. Let's see. So this is the landing here, focusing on how he's still trying to move forwards while landing. So I want the weight to come down and then shift forwards. So it looks like he comes down and then goes straight into a run. And this bit of animation right here, I think, was probably the best part in the entire thing. I feel like this is where I got the weight right. This is where I got everything else right. That initial vault and land, and then right here, I'm just creating the camera because, well, normally you don't want to do it this early on, but I was doing this because I wanted to make a GIF of it to post online. So I just did the initial camera shot for this, and checking to see how it looks when it renders, which won't be the same because I completely change it up later on. Okay, so we'll get back to the animation in a minute. I decided to start adding creepers now, and I screwed up the textures for this, which is always annoying, those stinking pink textures. I'm not sure why that's the default color. It's horribly ugly. But what I ended up doing, I think, is I had to re-download that image because I think I deleted it, or it might be in here still, I forget. Yes, I have a giant collection of images. Oh, there it is. Okay, there we go. I just found a creeper skin online, and I'm like, just stick it in there. I'm pretty sure I got the scale off. I think the blocks are smaller in comparison to the characters, and I think I made the creeper too big. I think he's about the size of Steve, but whatever. Here I'm just going to rig the creeper to have some really, really basic rigging. All he has is a spine and some bone controls for his legs. I added some loop cuts in the spine so he could have some bendiness. And then I just IK'd it and made them point to the head so that the body follows the rest of the head. Then just the same crap of re-weighting everything so you don't have any kind of funky distortion when you twist the body around. So here I just added the IK, and after this, I really didn't do too much animation with the creeper. I just made him do a walk cycle, which actually didn't end up making it into the final shot because it was never low enough to see his legs. But I made him do a walk cycle and then, of course, react to the hit from Steve. So just using the Rigify, because even though it was only, I did barely any animation on this, I prefer to use that Rigify add-on and give us those nice shapes, because it makes working with bones a little bit easier rather than trying to find the correct bone all the time. And it looks better. It looks better when you're showing it to people when it's in progress. I didn't do this with Steve, but oh well. I decided to do it with the creeper rig. Yeah, the lighting completely changed in the final scene. Like from this one, I just have a sun lamp pointing in one direction. I think it's straight down almost. So there was very little interesting, like there were very few interesting shadows, interesting lighting at all. What I ended up doing is just pointing it at a pretty heavy angle at the trees, and it made these really cool tree shadows in the final thing. So here's the walk cycle. After this point, the storyboard really didn't follow at all. I just had the initial leap, and then after that, I was just kind of goofing off with all kinds of punching and kicking. So he comes in, and then I had to change it so that he would come in and then go straight into a jump for a punch, which kind of ended up looking like crap in the end anyway, but oh well. I made the jump go a little bit too far, I think. It was way too floaty for realistic. The weight just kind of flies away. So here's the punch kind of looks cool, but it feels a little bit too floaty after watching it again. So I animate the one character at a time, because if I went back and animated both at once, if I decide to change something in the one character, and then I'll have to go back and change it for the other character too. So I just animate Steve's punch first, even though he goes straight through the creeper, and then I animate the creeper's reaction to it after. So I'm just making sure the punch looks good, make sure it connects with his face, first and foremost, because if you don't have a punch that connects to the face, like, what's the point? So even though this punch is a little bit crap still, I mean, it should have gone out farther. It's not terrible, I guess. I just wish I shifted the body towards the punch more. Once again, like following through with everything. But it looks okay. It's passable. Just cleaning up a little bit of the footwork here, because he has to touch the ground at some point. He can't just fly over there. Oh, and with walking, you always want to make sure the foot stays in the same place when it moves. Otherwise, they'll just slide along, and that's kind of awkward and crappy. So then doing the landing for the punch, as you can see, I'm making the foot go down, land on the ground first, and then have the rest of the body follow afterwards. And then having the reaction to the land, so he comes down and then bops up a little bit. You always have to have a little bit of a bounce when they land, because they kind of land, then come up a little bit, and then settle. And then all those minute tweaks you do to make it look a little bit better. And making sure that the arm doesn't go through his body or something when he jumps. So it's all about making sure everything looks okay for every frame. And then here I am finally animating the reaction to the punch. So I just make the creeper bounce when he gets hit. So he kind of like falls back, bounces up, and then finally settles. And then I was going to have another bunch of creepers, and I'm like, that'll take too long, and I'd have to reanimate everything, and I didn't really feel like doing that. So I just did a lot of work for nothing really at this point. I'm going to include this in the video because you can see that you can spend a lot of time on stuff that even doesn't end up doing anything. And it's not long anyway. It's only a couple minutes of this. So I was going to initially go around and have the creepers like walk in at him and then get kicked one by one. But that would have added at least another 2 hours of work. So I just left it with the one creeper in the end. Yeah, so here I am beginning to animate the jump kick sequence. So he leaps into the air and then spins around and kicks. Animating with rotation, like a full rotation of a character, is actually really freaking hard. Because Blender will try to find the shortest path, and sometimes that's back the other direction, so they'll jump, spin halfway, then spin back to where they initially started, and won't go all the way around, which is really annoying, and is something I ran into here. So what you have to do is keyframe it at every point around the kick, which is annoying, but you have to do it. And it's not terribly hard, it just takes a little bit of extra time. So here I got the kick here, and I'm finally landing the kick. I was trying to get the twist right, because he has to have enough twist to make it look like it was a forceful kick. This is another part that could have used a little bit more work, but I had to get something out the door. So the spin kicked, I had to make sure the other leg was doing something funky where it was staying still, and then he would like literally twist 360 degrees around one leg. So I just keyframed the leg to work the entire, to rotate with the body the entire time. And then, of course, the landing again, making sure you always get that little bit of bounce at the end. And then I made him, I took some Kung Fu a few years back, so I knew that you had to look before you kicked. So I just animated his head turning and looking before he actually started kicking, so he could line up the kick and just aim. Because Steve is good, but he's not that good. He can't kick without knowing when he's going to hit. And at this point, I was realizing, you know, I'm just hitting one creeper again, and I don't really want to have to move the other ones around. So I was like, I'll just do one. I was thinking of adding another creeper that just kind of like walked along the blocks in the back and then just fell over, because I think that would have been funny. But I didn't do that in the end. So hitting this guy twice in the face, so he punches him and then kicks him again, and finally the creeper goes down. And this kick is starting to look good now. Not great, but decent. So the jump, spin, kick, and then landing. And then I have to have that final shot of him zooming in. So, but I decided to do the camera animation first, because this is where the camera actually kind of became important. Oh, so here's a cool thing. When you do keyframe binding, camera binding, you don't want to do one giant shot of the camera with the camera. I decided to do multiple cameras in one scene. So what I did is I just have the first camera, then I switched to another one, and you can do that by adding a keyframe marker in the timeline, and then when you get to that point, you select a camera that's not the active one, and then in the timeline below, you hover over the timeline and hit Control B, and it will switch cameras. I might do a tutorial on that in case that's not making sense, but it's really cool because it allows you to just change cameras in one scene, which is super important because I have motion blur in the scene, and if I move the camera every time, you get like loads of crappy motion blur that isn't supposed to be there. Also, I animated the focus because I wanted to have some depth of field in this scene, so I added an empty and then pointed the depth of field to it. And animated the empty to match up with the character at all times. And then I got really, really annoyed with the kind of sloppiness of that part, so I added an extra step in there. Because I didn't want him to, because after watching it a bunch of times, it looked like he was floating the entire, floating that second jump, which led to the punch. So I just added another step, so it was a little bit shorter. And then lined up the punch so it looked more punchy. But Tish, I'm hysterical. And then finally, I at least laugh at my own jokes. Come on, give me that. Then finally, he just cleaning up that final kick. and making sure it looked good in camera. That's what's most important. If it doesn't look good in camera, you're gonna have to change it. Even if it's good animation, it has to look good in camera. And if it's bad animation, it looks good in camera, good to go. You can work with that. And then that final shot with him looking down and being all intense. So just zoom the camera in. And then add a little bit of motion for all the cameras so it looks more intense. So that's the final thing. That's a little bit too fast. But I hope you enjoyed this. Make sure to like, favorite, subscribe. Let me know what you thought of this series. It's over after, I think, 1 year in the making, which is way longer than I initially thought it was going to go. But I couldn't make as many tutorials as I was hoping to, so that's what ended up happening. Let me know if there's anything in this series that you want me to, in this time lapse that you want me to go over, like the camera binding or the depth of field animation. That would be something that I could make a quick tutorial about as an addendum. If not, let me know what other series you want me to make. I'm going to do more programming stuff for the moment, but I will not give up Blender because I think it's pretty cool. Once I do more game development stuff, I'll probably have heavier tilt towards a heavier emphasis on game art, which I've said previously but never really got to. But I think I'll get to it this time. This series kind of took over for the channel for a while, though. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. Like, favorite, subscribe. Let me know in the comments what you thought and what you would like to see in the future. So we will see you all later. Thank you very much for watching.